Let him die, or kiss the devil, and shatter everything. Evelyn's hand was already moving when security reached for their guns. The flash drive burns in Evelyn's palm as she crosses the ballroom floor. 200 faces turn. She's breaking the first rule of survival, never be seen. But the woman in the white gown standing beside Lim Kyung-soo is going to murder him in the next 8 minutes, and Evelyn can't unhear what she heard in that kitchen. After the toast, make it look like retaliation. Kyung-soo notices her. His eyes, dark, intelligent, dangerous, track her approach with the focused calm of a man who's never been surprised in his life. The dragon tattoo coiling up his neck catches the chandelier light. His champagne glass doesn't tremble. His posture doesn't shift. He has no idea he's already dead. The fiancé's smile freezes. Xion Park in her designer gown and her designer murder plot, one manicured hand possessive on his arm, calculating how much this disruption will cost. Security closes in. Hands drift toward concealed weapons. The lieutenant on Kyung-soo's left has his phone out, already calling it in, already treating her like a threat. She's a bartender in a server's vest, walking straight toward the most dangerous man in the city, and every armed criminal in this room knows what happens to people who get too close without permission. Evelyn has been hiding for 18 months. She left her career, her apartment, her entire life behind because Marcus Webb's obsession turned violent and restraining orders are just paper. She's worked cash-only jobs, avoided cameras, made herself invisible, and now she's about to become the most visible woman in the room. She reaches him, rises on her toes, presses her lips to his. The room detonates. His mouth is warm, surprised. She feels the exact moment his body registers the violation. The shift from powerful and relaxed to coiled and lethal in a fraction of a second. Her hand moves, pressing the flash drive into his palm, curling his fingers around evidence that will either save him or condemn her. When she pulls back, his eyes are open, locked on hers. "Your fiancé is going to kill you," she whispers against the shocked silence. "The proof is in your hand." Then hands are on her, security gripping her arms with professional brutality, and the room erupts into chaos. Siyun's perfect mask cracks. Guests surge forward. Someone shouts. Champagne shatters on marble. Kyung-soo raises one hand. Everything stops. "Let her go," he says quietly. The kind of quiet that makes men obey. "And bring her to my study." Before we follow Evelyn into that locked study, if you love emotional stories where one brave decision changes everything, hit subscribe right now. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading every single one. Don't be the one who misses the next chapter. His gaze never leaves Evelyn's face. She sees it then. The sharp intelligence behind the calm, the ruthless calculation, the question forming. Who are you and what do you want? She just kissed a mafia boss in front of 200 witnesses. She just destroyed her invisibility to save a stranger's life. And now she's going to find out if monsters know mercy, or if she just traded 18 months of hiding for a bullet in a marble-walled study. Security releases her. The crowd parts. And Evelyn walks toward her, reckoning with hands that won't stop shaking, and a man whose dragon tattoo marks him as something beautiful and deadly following 3 steps behind. The study smelled like old money and older secrets, leather bindings, polished mahogany, and something sharper underneath. Fear, maybe, or blood that had been scrubbed away but never quite forgotten. Evelyn's shoes sank into carpet so thick it swallowed sound. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, first editions arranged with the kind of precision that suggested someone actually read them. But it was the fourth wall that made her breath catch. A collection of framed weapons displayed like art, antique daggers, a samurai sword. Things meant to kill, polished until they gleamed. Kyung-soo moved behind a desk large enough to land a plane on. His movements unhurried, controlled. The dragon tattoo on his neck seemed to shift in the lamplight. He set down his champagne glass with a soft click that felt loud as a gunshot. His lieutenant stood by the door, a man built like a wall, with eyes that tracked her every breath, the kind of man who'd killed before and would again without losing sleep. "Sit," Kyung-soo said. Not an invitation, a command. Evelyn sat in the chair across from him, her legs shaking so badly she was grateful to be off her feet. Her server's vest felt too tight. Her mouth tasted like copper and regret. He picked up the flash drive she'd pressed into his palm, turned it over between his fingers like it might be a bomb. Maybe it was. Evidence often exploded lives just as thoroughly as bullets. "Play it," he said quietly. Evelyn's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, the cheap prepaid one she'd bought with cash, the one Marcus could never trace. She'd recorded Si-yoon's conversation in that kitchen, her hands shaking so hard she'd nearly dropped the phone twice. Now she connected it to the small speaker Kyung-soo slid across the desk and pressed play. Si-yoon's voice filled the room, cold and businesslike, speaking in Korean, but Evelyn had learned enough working Miami's diverse restaurant scene to catch the crucial words. The lieutenant translated in a low monotone, his face carved from stone. "After the toast, when he's distracted by the speeches, the Jade Serpents have people positioned. Make it look like retaliation for the dock incident. Clean, professional. His lieutenants will fold, or will handle them separately." The recording went on for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of a woman calmly planning her fiancé's murder the way someone might plan a dinner party. Discussing timing, positioning, cleanup. Negotiating her price for betrayal, territory, protection, a seat at a bigger table. Kyung-soo's face never changed. That calm, controlled mask stayed perfectly in place. But Evelyn watched his knuckles go white around his glass, watched the muscle in his jaw tick once, twice. The only signs that he was human underneath all that power and polish. When the recording ended, the silence felt like something alive and dangerous. He set down the glass, folded his hands on the desk, looked at her with those dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see straight through skin and bone to the terrified woman underneath. "Why warn me?" His voice was quiet, deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Evelyn's throat felt like sandpaper. She'd rehearsed a dozen clever answers in her head during that endless walk to the study. Strategic responses, self-protective lies. But sitting here, under the weight of his attention, with death displayed on the walls and her own fate balanced on the edge of his decision, only the truth came out. Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. Her voice cracked, but she held his gaze. "I heard her planning to kill you. I had a choice. Walk away and let it happen, or do something. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe I just destroyed my own life for nothing. But I couldn't. I couldn't just let you die when I could warn you." She thought of Marcus, of reporting his crimes and losing everything, of choosing right over safe, again and again, until she had nothing left but her conscience and a brother she was trying to protect. "I've made that choice before," she whispered. To speak up when staying silent would have been easier. It cost me everything, but I'd do it again. I did do it again. Tonight. Kyung-soo studied her in silence that stretched so long she wondered if he'd already decided to kill her, if he was just working out the details. His eyes moved over her face like he was reading a language only he could understand, piecing together a puzzle with missing pieces. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, that dangerous calm still wrapped around him like armor. "You're either very brave," he said slowly, "or very stupid." Evelyn managed a weak smile that felt more like a grimace. "Can't it be both?" Something flickered in his eyes, not quite amusement, but not quite murder either. "Tell me your name." "Evelyn. Evelyn Murillo." "Evelyn," he said it carefully, like he was testing how it fit in his mouth. "You've just saved my life and complicated yours considerably. I think we need to have a much longer conversation." He glanced at his lieutenant, gave a small nod. The man disappeared into the hallway, and Evelyn realized she'd just stepped through a door that only locked from one side. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the penthouse into something that felt more like a museum than a home. Evelyn sat at the far end of a marble dining table that could have seated 12, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup that was still too hot to drink. She hadn't slept. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the moment when Kyung-soo's security had gripped her arms, when 200 faces had turned toward her like searchlights. Across from her, Kyung-soo sat with the same unsettling calm he'd shown last night. His suit jacket was gone, his white dress shirt rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms marked with ink she hadn't noticed before. He was reading something on his phone, his breakfast untouched, and Evelyn wondered if he ever felt anything as ordinary as hunger or fear. "Tell me about Marcus Webb," he said without looking up. Her stomach dropped. Of course he'd already looked into her. Men like him didn't take chances on strangers who kissed them at engagement parties. She set down the coffee cup, her hands steadier than she felt. "I met him at Henderson & Associates. I was a forensic accountant. He was a senior analyst, brilliant with numbers, charming in meetings, the kind of person everyone trusted." She paused, remembering Marcus's easy smile, the way he'd brought her coffee during late nights at the office. "I was assigned to audit one of his client portfolios. Standard review, except the numbers didn't add up." Kyung-soo's eyes lifted to hers, dark, assessing, waiting. "He'd been embezzling for 3 years, small amounts at first, then larger. By the time I caught it, he'd stolen over $2 million. The words tasted bitter. "I reported it. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You were," Kyung-soo said quietly. "Maybe." Evelyn's throat tightened. The firm launched an investigation. Marcus lost his license, his reputation, everything. And he blamed me, started showing up at my apartment, sending flowers with notes that said things like, "We were meant to work together," and "You didn't have to betray me." She heard her voice crack and hated it. "I got a restraining order. He violated it 7 times before the police finally took it seriously." She reached into her bag, the same canvas tote she'd carried for 18 months, and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the creases from being handled too many times. She slid it across the marble table. Kyung-soo unfolded it carefully, his expression unchanging as he read the restraining order with Marcus Webb's name printed in black ink, followed by page after page of violation reports. Each one documented with dates, times, places Marcus had appeared when he wasn't supposed to. "The last time, he was waiting outside my apartment at 3 a.m, Evelyn said softly. "He told me he'd forgiven me, that we could start over if I just apologized." She wrapped her arms around herself. "That's when I disappeared. Changed my name on work documents, took cash jobs, avoided cameras. I've been invisible for 18 months because the alternative was waiting for him to decide forgiveness wasn't enough. Kyung-soo set the paper down, his fingers drumming once against the table, the first sign of anything resembling emotion. And last night, you made yourself visible to save a stranger. I couldn't just let you die, she said simply. He studied her for a long moment, and Evelyn had the uncomfortable feeling of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Not as the invisible bartender or the woman in hiding, but as someone whose choices mattered. I have a proposal, he said finally. You help me track the financial trails of the conspiracy against me. Your forensic skills in exchange for my protection. Marcus Webb won't find you here. No one touches what's mine. The weight of that last word, mine, settled between them like a contract neither had signed yet. Evelyn looked at the restraining order on the table, at the man across from her whose dragon tattoo marked him as dangerous, at the penthouse windows that showed a city she'd been hiding from for far too long. She thought about courage and what it cost, about the difference between hiding and surviving. Okay, she whispered. I'll help you. And just like that, Evelyn Murillo stopped running. The guest suite was nothing like the cold, narrow rooms Evelyn had survived in for the past year. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below like a painting she'd never dared imagine owning. The bed was impossibly soft, the air smelled faintly of jasmine, and when she turned the faucet, hot water came instantly. No sputtering, no rust. She stood in the shower longer than necessary, letting the steam fill her lungs, washing away more than just the grime of her old life. But comfort, she was learning, came with a price she couldn't yet name. Kyung-soo's people watched her like she was a puzzle they couldn't solve. At breakfast the next morning, a tall woman named Ji-hye brought her tea without a word, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. In the hallway, two men in dark suits stopped talking the moment she passed. She caught fragments. Liability, mistake, won't last a week. Their suspicion clung to the air like smoke. Evelyn kept her head down and her ears open. She'd learned long ago that invisible women heard the most. On the third night, she couldn't sleep. The apartment was too quiet, too perfect. She wandered into the common area, drawn by low voices drifting from Kyung-soo's office. The door was cracked just enough. She's a weakness, Ji-hye said, her tone cold and certain. Seyoon could use her against you. Seyoon already made her choice. Kyung-soo's voice was calm, unmoved. Evelyn is here because I allow it. That's all anyone needs to know. And when they find out why Seyoon left, another voice, male, rougher, that she was offered everything, your territory, your position. If she eliminated you first? Evelyn's breath caught. Her hand gripped the doorframe. The Jade Serpents made her an offer she couldn't refuse, Kyung-soo said quietly. Control of the entire network. Power her family lost generations ago. All she had to do was kill me and marry their son instead. Silence. Then Ji-hye again, softer now. And she chose them. She chose survival, Kyung-soo corrected. Just like my father's enemies chose to kill him when I was 19. Just like I chose to take this position I never wanted, because the alternative was watching everything burn. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her ears. She'd known Seyoon was dangerous, cunning, but this was betrayal wrapped in ambition, a calculated trade of one man's life for a crown. And Kyung-soo? He'd inherited an empire built on blood when he was barely more than a boy. You've spent 10 years holding this together, the man said. Don't let sentiment undo it now. Sentiment? Kyung-soo's laugh was brief, humorless. Evelyn is a reminder, nothing more. Evelyn stepped back, her heart a wild thing in her chest. A reminder of what? Of trust broken? Of the woman who nearly destroyed him? She returned to her room, sliding the door shut with trembling hands. The city lights outside blurred as tears stung her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the weight of understanding. She wasn't just living in Kyung-soo's building. She was living in the center of a war she'd stumbled into by accident, a pawn on a board where every move mattered. Seyoon had chosen power. Kyung-soo had chosen duty. And Evelyn? She'd chosen nothing yet, but she was starting to realize that staying silent, staying small, wasn't going to keep her safe anymore. In this gilded cage, even the comfortable could be dangerous. 2 weeks after moving into the penthouse, Evelyn woke to the sound of shattering glass. She bolted upright, heart hammering against her ribs. For a second, she thought she'd imagined it, that her mind had conjured danger out of the silence. But then she heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, moving through the living room like they belonged there. She didn't scream. Her body had learned not to waste breath on sounds that wouldn't save her. Instead, she grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and pressed the emergency button Kyung-soo had programmed into it 3 days ago. Just in case, he'd said. She'd rolled her eyes then, thinking he was being paranoid. Now she understood. The door to her bedroom flew open. A man stood there, backlit by the hallway light, something metallic glinting in his hand. She couldn't see his face, but she didn't need to. She knew exactly who had sent him.
Seyoon says hello,
the man said, his voice flat, mechanical. Before he could take another step, the room erupted. Bodyguards flooded in from nowhere, the ones she'd barely noticed in the past 2 weeks, shadows she'd grown accustomed to ignoring. They moved like water, fast and seamless, and within seconds the intruder was on the ground, disarmed, his face pressed into her carpet. Evelyn sat frozen on her bed, her whole body shaking so hard she thought her bones might crack. Then Kyung-soo was there. He appeared in the doorway like a storm, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, fury radiating from him in waves she could almost feel against her skin. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, his expression softened just enough that she could breathe again. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low, controlled, but she heard the edge underneath. She shook her head. Words felt impossible. He nodded once, then turned to his men. "Get him out. Find out who else knows she's here." They dragged the man away. Kyung-soo stayed. The next morning, he called her into his office. The room smelled like leather and coffee, and the city stretched out beneath them through floor-to-ceiling windows, bright, oblivious, alive. Evelyn felt like she was watching it all from underwater. "Being under my protection isn't enough," Kyung-soo said without preamble. He stood behind his desk, hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. "They see you as leverage, a weakness. As long as you're just a ward under my care, you're a target. So what do you want me to do?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Disappear?" "No." He pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across to her. "Marry me." She stared at him, then at the folder, then back at him, certain she'd misheard. "It's a contract," he continued, as if he'd just suggested they order takeout. 2 years, a prenuptial agreement that guarantees your financial security regardless of what happens. After that, you walk away clean, free, protected, set for life. But while you're my wife, you're untouchable. No one will dare come near you. Evelyn opened the folder with numb fingers. The papers inside were dense, legal, coldly professional. Every clause designed to protect her. Every exit mapped out in black ink. You don't have to decide now. I'll do it. He looked surprised. Maybe even impressed. You're sure? She met his eyes. You said it yourself. Being under protection isn't enough, and I'm tired of being afraid. The ceremony happened 3 days later in a lawyer's office downtown. No flowers, no music, just witnesses in gray suits and the scratch of pens on paper. Evelyn wore a simple cream dress she'd bought that morning. Kyung-soo wore black, as always. When the officiant asked for the rings, she expected something hollow, performative, but when Kyung-soo took her hand, his touch warm, steady, and slid the platinum band onto her finger, he didn't let go right away. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, just once, and when she looked up, she saw something she hadn't expected. Protection, yes. Calculation, certainly. But also, something softer. Something almost like care. It unsettled her more than any threat ever had. Because she realized, standing there in that sterile room, that she wasn't the only one taking a risk. The dress arrived in a black lacquered box 3 hours before the auction. Evelyn lifted the lid and caught her breath. Not at its beauty, though it was stunning, but at what it represented. Midnight silk that moved like water. A neckline that suggested strength rather than seduction. And subtle armor-like boning that transformed her silhouette into something between a queen and a warrior. Kyung-soo's stylist had understood the assignment perfectly. She wasn't meant to look vulnerable. She was meant to look like she belonged to him. You're nervous, Kyung-soo said when she emerged. It wasn't a question. Terrified, she admitted, smoothing her hands down the silk. His eyes traveled over her once, clinical and assessing. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He adjusted his cufflinks, platinum, understated, lethal. Stay beside me. Say nothing unless I indicate otherwise. And Evelyn? He met her gaze. Remember that everyone in that room will try to find my weakness. Don't give them one. The weight of those words settled on her shoulders like a mantle. The auction was held in a renovated factory on the city's edge, all exposed brick and crystal chandeliers that cast fractured light across faces she'd only seen in Kyung-soo's files. These were the men who carved up territories like birthday cakes, who spoke in coded pleasantries while their hands rested near concealed weapons. Evelyn felt their eyes on her immediately, calculating, measuring, searching for cracks in Kyung-soo's armor. She kept her face serene and her hand light on his arm. The negotiations began over champagne and hushed conversations. Evelyn watched her husband transform into something both familiar and alien. His voice never rose above a conversational murmur, yet men twice his age leaned in to catch every word. He spoke of shipping routes and distribution channels with the detached precision of a surgeon discussing an operation. When someone pushed back, Kyung-soo simply smiled. That cold, empty smile she'd seen once before, and the objection died in the man's throat. She began to understand the crushing isolation of his position. To be feared so completely meant being truly known by no one. Beautiful wife you have there, Kwan. The voice came from her left, a silver-haired man with cruel eyes. Park Jin-woo, she remembered from the files. Territorial boss from the Southern District. Delicate thing. I hope she's careful. So many accidents can happen in our world. The room didn't go silent. That would have been too obvious. But conversations shifted. Voices dropped half a register. Everyone was listening. Kyung-soo turned slowly, and Evelyn felt the air itself change texture. He looked at Park Jin-woo the way one might regard an insect that had landed on an expensive suit. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that Evelyn had to strain to hear him. My wife is under my protection, which means any threat, veiled or otherwise, is a declaration I take very personally. He took a single step closer to Park. And I'm sure you remember what happened the last time someone made things personal with me. Though I suppose his family tries not to remember. Difficult, without a body to bury. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Park's face went ashen. Kyung-soo smiled again, all teeth and ice. Enjoy the auction, Jin-woo. Later, back in the penthouse, Evelyn's hands shook as she removed her earrings. Kyung-soo appeared in the doorway, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. You did well tonight, he said. I didn't do anything. Exactly. He moved closer. But now you understand why you need to be able to protect yourself. Come. He led her to the open living room, pushed furniture aside with efficient movements. Basic self-defense. If someone grabs your wrist. He demonstrated, his fingers warm against her skin. You twist here, step here, use their momentum. It was the first time he'd touched her outside of their carefully staged public appearances. His hands were surprisingly gentle as they guided her through the movements, positioning her body, correcting her stance. Close enough that she could feel his breath, smell the faint scent of his cologne. Again, he said softly, and she wondered if he felt it too. This strange intimacy, born not from affection, but from necessity, from two people learning to survive together in a world that wanted to tear them apart. The phone buzzed against the kitchen counter just as Evelyn was pouring her second cup of coffee. For a moment, she stared at it. That sleek black device Kyung-soo had given her, the one that was supposed to keep her invisible, untraceable. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. The photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, like a nightmare materializing in front of her eyes. Mateo, her baby brother, 23 years old and completely oblivious, walking out of his dorm building with his backpack slung over one shoulder, headphones in, that easy smile on his face that meant he was probably listening to that terrible reggaeton music he loved. Below the photo, 2 words, found you. The coffee mug slipped from her other hand, shattering against the tile floor in an explosion of ceramic and dark liquid. She didn't hear it, didn't feel the hot splash against her ankles. All she could see was Mateo's face, frozen in that casual, innocent moment, completely unaware that a monster had been watching him. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Her fingers flew across the screen, pulling up Kyung-soo's number, but before she could dial, her apartment door opened. He walked in with that quiet confidence he always carried, but his expression stopped her cold. He already knew. How? The word came out strangled. You said we were safe. You said Marcus couldn't. Someone told him. Kyung-soo's voice was controlled, but she could hear the edge beneath it, sharp as broken glass. My team traced the leak. It came from inside Siyun's network. Evelyn's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, still clutching the phone like it might somehow protect her brother from 3,000 miles away. I don't understand. Why would they? To destabilize me. He moved closer, his jaw tight. They know what I'm protecting. They know that threatening you, threatening him, is the fastest way to make me react emotionally instead of strategically. Then it's working. Her voice cracked. Because I can't let anything happen to Mateo. He has nothing to do with this. He's just a college kid who wants to be an engineer and argues with me about whether anime counts as real art and... Her throat closed around the words. Kyung-soo knelt in front of her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something raw cross his face. Not the careful composure, not the calculated distance, just human concern. Call him. What do I even say? Tears blurred her vision. Hey, remember that ex-boyfriend I never told you about? The one who put his hands around my throat? Well, he's found you now because of me, because I'm stupid enough to still be alive and trying to... Evelyn. His hand covered hers, warm and steady. Breathe, then call him. She dialed with shaking fingers. It rang once, twice, and she was preparing to leave a voicemail when his voice filled her ear, bright and completely unsuspecting. Ev. What's up? You never call during the week? Mateo, listen to me very carefully. She forced her voice steady even as tears streamed down her face. I need you to go straight to campus security right now. Don't go back to your dorm. Don't stop to talk to anyone. What? Why? You're freaking me out. There's someone dangerous looking for me, and they've found you instead. The words tasted like ash. So sorry. God, Mateo, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I should have told you everything. I should have warned you. But I thought keeping you in the dark would keep you safe, and instead Evelyn, stop. His voice had changed, dropped into something older, more serious. Where are you right now? Are you safe? Kyung-soo was watching her with an intensity that made her chest ache. She realized suddenly that this was the first time he'd seen her completely unraveled. No walls, no practiced smiles, just the raw, terrified truth of who she was. I'm safe, she whispered into the phone, though she'd never felt less safe in her life. But you need to... I'm already walking to security, Mateo said. Now tell me everything. The call came at 1:43 in the morning. Campus security had spotted a man matching Marcus's description circling the library where Mateo studied late on Tuesdays. By the time they responded, he was gone. Just a shadow caught on grainy footage, close enough to make Evelyn's hands shake so violently she couldn't hold her phone. Kyung-soo had driven to the campus himself, stayed until dawn with his security team, making sure Marcus was truly gone. When he finally returned to the penthouse, he found his living room empty, the guest room door open, bed still made. She was on the balcony. 42 floors up, the city spread below like a carpet of lights, and Evelyn stood at the railing in one of his shirts. She'd stopped going back to her apartment 3 weeks ago, though neither of them had acknowledged why. Her arms were wrapped around herself against the October wind, and even from the doorway, Kyung-soo could see she was crying in that silent, bone-deep way that came after the adrenaline finally crashed. He didn't say anything, just walked out and stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He was right there, she whispered, 20 feet from my son. 20 feet, and I couldn't. But he wasn't hurt. Kyung-soo's voice was quiet. Mateo's safe. Marcus is gone. For now. She turned to him, and the rawness in her face made his chest tight. But he'll come back. He always comes back, and one day my luck will run out, and... Her voice broke. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep being this terrified version of myself, jumping at shadows, planning escape routes everywhere I go. I used to be happy, Kyung-soo. I used to laugh at stupid jokes and believe people were mostly good, and now She pressed her palms to her eyes. I don't even recognize myself. He'd watched her be brave for months now, watched her smile through investor meetings and hold her head high at galas, and refused to let Marcus's shadow make her small. But this exhausted honesty was the first time she'd let him see the weight of it. I'm tired too, he said. She lowered her hands, looking at him. Everyone thinks I wanted this. He gestured vaguely at the penthouse, the city, the empire his name represented. The business, the reputation, everything. But my father built this world, not me. I just inherited it. He leaned against the railing, jaw tight. Do you know what it's like to spend every day trying to make something brutal into something legitimate? To know that no matter how many hospitals I fund or legitimate businesses I build, people will always see blood money first? Then why do it? Duty. Family. Because walking away would mean letting it fall into hands worse than mine. He looked at her. But some nights I wonder what it would be like to just be normal. To not calculate risks before I drink my coffee or scan every room for exits. The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, they just stood there. Two people who'd forgotten how to be anything but vigilant. I miss who I was before, Evelyn said softly. Before every instinct became about survival. I barely remember who I was before. His hand moved before he could think better of it, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But I think I'm starting to remember around you. She went very still. His hand lingered against her cheek, and the air between them shifted into something dangerous. Kyung-soo. He kissed her, not carefully, not strategically, but like a man who'd been holding his breath for months and finally broke. She made a sound against his mouth. Surprise, maybe, or relief. And then she was kissing him back with the same reckless hunger, her fingers tangling in his hair, his arms pulling her close enough to feel her heartbeat against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn pressed her forehead to his. This wasn't part of the contract, she whispered. I know. His thumb traced her jawline. We just made this infinitely more complicated. I know. Neither of them moved away. The phone buzzed at 4:17 a.m., that cruel hour when the world is still dark and every sound feels like a violation. Evelyn reached for it instinctively, her body still warm against Kyung-soo's, their breathing synchronized in the quiet of his bedroom. But the moment she saw the screen, everything inside her went cold. It was a video call from Marcus. Her hand trembled as she answered, and Kyung-soo was already awake beside her, alert in that instantaneous way of his. The way a man learns when danger has been his constant companion. Marcus's face filled the screen. But it wasn't the Marcus she'd once known. His eyes were wild, unfocused, darting around like a cornered animal's. Behind him, she could see concrete walls, exposed pipes, the industrial skeleton of some abandoned place. And there, tied to a chair in the background, was Mateo. Evelyn. Marcus's voice cracked on her name, desperate and strange. Evelyn, I did what they asked. I got him for you. For us. Her stomach lurched. Marcus, what have you done? They said if I bring you to them, we can be together. Like before. Like it was supposed to be. His laugh was broken, jagged. I just need you to come alone. To the old warehouse district on Morrison Street. You remember it, don't you? We drove past it once, On our way to— Let him go, Kyung-soo said quietly, his voice like steel wrapped in silk. He'd moved closer to the phone, his presence filling the small screen. This isn't about him. Let the boy go. Marcus's face contorted. You. This is because of you. She was mine first. She loved me first. I'm coming, Evelyn said quickly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Marcus, I'm coming. Just don't hurt him. Please. The call ended abruptly, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kyung-soo was on his feet, already pulling on clothes, already making calls in rapid Korean. She could hear the shift in his voice, the commander emerging, cold and efficient and terrifying in its precision. How many men can you have there in 20 minutes? He barked into the phone. No, full tactical. I want— Kyung-soo. She stood, wrapping the sheet around herself, her voice quiet but firm. Wait. He turned to her, phone still pressed to his ear. And she saw it in his eyes. The old instinct, the muscle memory of violence as the first and only solution. There's another way, she said. He ended the call without breaking eye contact. Evelyn, I won't risk. I know. She crossed to him, placed her hands on his chest, felt his heart racing beneath her palms. But you have intelligence on Marcus. You have evidence of what Siyun's people have done. What if we give that to the police? What if we let the system work the way it's supposed to, while your people position as backup? The system failed you before. I know, but maybe it can work this time. Maybe we can choose something different. Her voice broke slightly. Maybe you can choose something different. She watched the war play out across his face. Decades of training, of survival, of solving problems with force and fear, battling against this fragile new thing they were building together. This possibility of another life. Finally, he picked up the phone again. Change of plans, he said quietly. I need everything we have on Marcus Hayes delivered to Detective Sarah Chen at the precinct within 15 minutes. Anonymous tip, untraceable. Then I want tactical teams positioned at every exit of the Morrison Street warehouses, concealed, weapons ready, but no engagement unless I give the word. He looked at Evelyn as he spoke, and she saw it in his eyes. Trust. Terrifying and new. We're going to try it her way. The federal building was cold and gray, nothing like the polished elegance Kyung-soo had built his empire around. He sat across from 3 prosecutors, a manila folder thick with documents resting between them, and for the first time in 20 years, he told the truth. Every shipment route, every offshore account, every name that had ever whispered through the Jade Serpent Triad's shadowed halls. He spoke for 6 hours straight, his voice never wavering, knowing that each word was a nail in the coffin of the life he'd once thought he couldn't escape. When it was done, the lead prosecutor slid a document across the table. Immunity, contingent on full cooperation and complete divestment within 24 months. Kyung-soo signed without hesitation. Walking out into the autumn sunlight, he felt lighter than he had in decades, as if he'd been carrying stones in his chest and had finally set them down. But there was one more thing he had to do. He found Evelyn in the garden behind the estate, the same place where she'd once told him she was afraid of him. She was sitting on the stone bench, wrapped in a cardigan, watching leaves spiral down from the maple trees. When she heard his footsteps, she turned, and he saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out the contract they'd signed all those months ago. That cold, transactional document with its clauses and conditions, its carefully worded protections against intimacy. Without a word, he tore it in half. Then in half again. The pieces fluttered to the ground like broken promises. "Evelyn," he said quietly, and his voice was raw in a way she'd never heard. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She nodded, her throat tight. "Will you marry me?" He turned to face her fully now, his dark eyes steady and clear. "Not because you're bound by a contract, not because you're afraid of what might happen if you leave, but because you choose to, because you want this, want us, despite everything we've been through." The question hung in the air between them, fragile and terrifying. Evelyn thought of all the versions of herself she'd been, the frightened witness, the contract wife, the woman who'd learned to read the shadows in his eyes. She thought of Mateo's laughter echoing through rooms that had once felt like a prison. She thought of Kyung-soo's hands trembling as he'd held her after Siyun's attack, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. "Yes," she whispered, and then stronger. "Yes. I choose you." "I choose this." His breath left him in a rush, and when he kissed her, it felt like the first time, like they were starting over, clean and new. 3 weeks later, they stood in a small chapel with afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows, painting everything in colors that reminded Evelyn of redemption. Mateo sat in the front row, grinning so wide his face might split. Beside him, James Chen, Kyung-soo's oldest friend, wiped at his eyes when he thought no one was looking. There was no minister reading traditional vows. Instead, Kyung-soo and Evelyn had written their own. "I promise to choose you every day," Kyung-soo said, his voice steady but soft. "Not because I have to, but because there's nothing I want more than to build a life with you that's honest and whole. I promise to be worthy of your trust, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Evelyn's hands trembled in his, but her voice didn't waver. "I promise to stand beside you in the light, not hide in the shadows. I promise to believe in who you're becoming, not just who you were. I promise to love you with my whole heart, the scared parts and the brave parts and everything in between." When they kissed, Mateo cheered and sunlight caught the simple gold bands on their fingers. Walking back down the aisle together, Evelyn felt something shift inside her chest. Not fear, not survival, but joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. She was done hiding. They both were, and whatever came next, they would face it together in full light. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is choose to begin again. Evelyn and Kyung-soo's story reminds us that it's never too late to walk away from the shadows we've been living in, that real love isn't about control or fear. It's about choosing each other freely, every single day. We learn that redemption is possible when we're willing to face the truth, that trust can be rebuilt one honest moment at a time, and that the life we thought we were trapped in doesn't have to be the life we keep living. Their journey shows us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. And perhaps most importantly, we see that we all deserve a second chance at happiness, no matter what our past looks like. Thank you so much for watching Evelyn and Kyung-soo's story unfold. I hope it touched your heart the way it touched mine. See you in the next video.